Well, hello guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. And this Friday is pretty special because I have Blake from Mid-Century Wasted. Jamie's husband is on today talking vinyl, and I am so excited to finally have Blake. So this is really a fun show, and I'm so glad all of you guys are joining in the chat. I know it's going to take a little while for folks to trickle in, but I'm thrilled that all of you are here to talk music and just hang out and have a great time. So Blake, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into vinyl and just in general your love for music.
Well, you know, I liked music growing up, but I was never really into it like I am now. I hadn't listened to a vinyl record, you know, up until I was maybe 34, 33. You know, Jamie had this crate of records that her dad got her from somebody years ago. And we didn't have a record player. And I was like, hey, those are cool. Like, I wonder what those sound like. And then one Christmas, she bought me one of those Crosley dance set turntables with the little legs because it looked cool, you know. And so I was like, oh, let's play them. So I put it on. And I was like, it's cool. It's awesome. And then, you know, it kind of just took off from there into the Twilight Zone, really. Now I'm fully into it. I have, you know, the little Crosley record player. I was reading that, you know, they're not necessarily the greatest things to use for your records, you know. And I was like, and I started getting into my head, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to ruin my records that I buy, you know, or just wear them out faster than they get worn out normally. And so, you know, I was like, oh, I got to get some new. And so I just started like going on Facebook Marketplace and yard sales and everything, and I've built this like massive stereo now, and it's all from like yard sales and you know, grandma giving away all this old stereo gear at a yard sale. It's really what it is. And so I've accumulated a lot of stuff. I kind of tend to like hit into things that I get into really hard, but they always like fizzle out. But this doesn't seem to be fizzling out. It's too fun, and there's too much cool music to listen to. And now I'm like learning about, you know, all the artists and stuff, and it's very entertaining, and it's very rewarding too. To keep their spirits alive, you know. Some of them are long gone, too.
Yes, that's the thing that I've been really, you know, wondering with some of these artists passing away if their music is going to get more popular, and I think that it really has. People just fall in love with this great music. And I was talking to Blake before the show, and I said, how many records do you have? And I had like 19. And I said, it's like choosing your children. You can't pick your favorite because all of them are your favorite. And I have so many records. I'm like, oh, that would be good. Oh, that would be good. And I'm like, well, I can't show them all in this one show. We don't have 5, 6, 7 hours, but that would be fun to do like an all-night vinyl marathon one time and share all of our records. So we've got some folks coming in the chat, and I want to say a quick hello to Poodle. Poodle's our fellow music lover. Her son works at a record store, and they have a big collection of vinyl, so it's always fun to get Poodle's emails with different vinyl recommendations. And Barbie's in the chat, Punk, Funk, and Junk, and Amy's joining us, and Deb Sherman, and Dolores, Miss Damn Jewelry, is here from across the pond. Our Rockin Rodent Doo-Wop Bob is back from the Johnny G's Vinyl Treasure Show. Welcome, Bob. Maria is here. Hi, Maria. Dee from Thrill of the Thrift. Helen Booty, New England Thrifter, is joining us. Maria, Empty Nesting. Tiger. Hello, Tiger's in the chat. And let's see, how many other folks are here? Adam is here from Record Crate, our other fellow vinyl lover in the chat. Welcome, Adam. Sharon is joining us. Hello, Sharon. And Auntie Kay, she said she's so glad she made it. She didn't want to miss this one. Hello, Mr. Mid-Century Wasted. I love that name. And Angela is in the chat. Dear Angela's Vintage. Joanne Johnson is joining us. VLN is here. Vintage Loving Nerd. Welcome, welcome. Proud American. Dalbert is in the chat. He's probably going to keep us laughing through this show. Mary Jo Vakowski is joining us, and so many other great folks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I'm so excited to talk vinyl with Blake, and I love talking with Blake on Instagram because he's always sharing some of his audio equipment setup, and it is amazing. I am blown away by what you find, Blake, because I've been looking here on Facebook Marketplace, as you know, and things just go like that. If you don't get to it in the first 5 seconds it's listed, it's gone.
It's true. And it's even harder for me to find stuff now too. There's a lot of people looking, and it's, I'm lucky I got into it when I was getting into it, because those finds are just not around anymore.
Yeah, I think
they're gone quick.
The vinyl resurgence is happening, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think vintage stereo resurgence too. I can't say whether or not vintage sounds better or not. It may not, but it's cheaper compared to new stuff, because if you have somebody that you can take it to for service, which does cost a little bit of money too, it's definitely worth it than buying new, because new stuff is very expensive. And you just flip through the Music Direct catalog, and you'll see real quick that things are just thousands of dollars.
They can get really expensive, and I really think that Blake's vintage audio equipment sounds way better than my new clips. I'm just convinced of that, hearing it. I mean, I haven't heard it in person, but through video, I just think there's a warmth and a depth to it that's really, really nice. And we do have some questions already coming in the chat, which is wonderful. Amy Weaver's asking us if we have a favorite genre of music. Hers is Motown, and Amy, I do love some Motown. What is yours, Blake?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It just depends on what mood I'm in and what time of the day it is.
It does depend on the mood. I agree.
Rock, blues, and jazz. Jazz at night is the best.
Jazz is nice at night.
Mostly because it's quiet and I can listen to it and the kids don't wake up.
That's true. If you had some heavy Metallica on at 9 o'clock at night, I don't know if your neighbors would like that, or your kids.
Sure.
And Jamie's saying hello from the park. We're so glad you're here, Jamie. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody else. And Dee is saying, I wouldn't know the first thing to buy as far as records. And I would say that you just got to buy what you love. What do you think about that, Blake?
I mean, yeah, I have no problem with, ask the person at the record store too. Chances are the owner of the store, or, unless it's a big record store, even if it's a big record store, the people that work there know a lot about records. And if it's a small record store, usually the owner is really into records too. And just ask them what they like, or they'll ask you questions about what kind of music you like, and then they'll make you suggestions. Or go on YouTube. There's a lot of people on YouTube talking about records. So
there are. You can find so many different record channels, and if you just get into watching some of those, like Adam at Record Crate, who's in the chat, or Johnny G's Vinyl Treasure Show, I mean, you can listen to some of those broadcasts and really find some interesting things that you didn't think that you might be into, and give it a listen and fall in love with it. You never know. Now, Auntie Kay's asking, do any of you play an instrument? I played clarinet in the 5th grade and was terrible at it. What about you, Blake?
I sing in the shower.
I like that.
No, I have a bass that I started playing about around Christmas time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, it just takes lots of practice, lots and lots of practice, and you'll get there. And I think with your love of music, that probably does help learn a little faster than others.
Yeah, I mean, it's finding time to play. That's the hardest thing for me right now. But sometimes I get on and play a little bit, but I can't do long periods of time. I just don't have the time to do it.
And Adam from Record Crate is asking, which genre of jazz do you like, Blake?
Hard bop.
Fantastic. Well, today, folks, we are going to show some of our favorite records, and I've picked out some. Blake has picked out some. And, of course, if you have questions throughout the show, do drop them in the chat, and I'll highlight them here. The chat is moving fast, so it's a little harder for me to keep up this time, but I am following along best I can. So, Blake, since you are the guest, why don't you go first and show your first record?
So the first one I pulled, it was the first one I pulled out. The first one I pulled out from of my jazz section. I'll start with the old stuff first. I have Sonny Clark's Cool Struttin', which was a classic records title. Classic records title was just released maybe last month. Blue Note's been doing this classic series reissues, and these are only $24.99. All of them are mastered from the original analog tapes. So it's about as original as you can possibly get, and it's unbelievable. It's so good. I was listening to it last night, and then I was reading up about Sonny Clark too, because I'm learning about these artists still, and he died at like 31 years old of like a heroin overdose, and these guys just lived hard lives. They made really good music, and he made this record when he was like 26, and I'm thinking about what I was doing when I was 26, and it wasn't making awesome records, that's for sure.
That is a really, really cool record, Blake. And I've heard about those Blue Note reissues, and they're really quite popular. And I've heard that they're just amazing in quality.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that touches it. If you have a good system, and I have some old Wharfdale speakers that play acoustic type music very, very well. And these records were recorded in just a room somewhere. They were mixed on the fly by the recording engineers, and they were just slapped on a tape and then cataloged somewhere, So, I mean, there's a couple times where I've been listening to it, and I'm like, the trumpet kicks on, and on the left channel, I can hear a trumpet in the background. On the right channel, there's nothing. And then on the right channel, I hear a volume go up with the trumpet. And so I'm like, oh, he's mixing on the fly. I went to like Apple Music, and I was like, oh, there it is. That's literally an on the spot, mixing. They can't redo it. They can make them play again. But when you're recording a 10-minute jazz song, there is no re-recording it. It's kind of just, it is what it is. And it's great.
I think it's really cool when you can actually sit down and listen to music, because I think a lot of times we listen to music as we're, doing something in the kitchen, or we're listening to it as we're driving, and we don't really hear those things like you're talking about, Blake, in the music. And it's kind of neat when you put on vinyl and you shut the world away and you just get to hear the music. There's so many things you pick up on that you wouldn't have noticed if you were just listening to it as you were going about your day.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
So the first record that I want to show is really cool. I got this recently, and I was very excited about this. This is Rockin Robin by Bobby Day. Now, Bobby Day is from Fort Worth, Texas, and this came out in 1959. And this record is phenomenal. And this song, of course, Rockin Robin, hit number 2 on the charts. And, of course, Michael Jackson went on to cover it. I mean, this is just a fabulous album. And this isn't a pretty hard to find original. I kind of paid up a little bit for this, but it is so worth it, because this has just some amazing, amazing tracks on it. Rockin Robin is on here, and then Over and Over, which is played all the time on 50s on 5, but I absolutely love this. And then Little Bitty Pretty One. Now, I was reading online a little bit about this, and I had read that Bobby Day was the one that actually wrote that song. I always thought Thurston Harris was the one that originally recorded it, but apparently, according to several websites, Bobby Day was the first one, and then other people went to have hits with it, like Clyde McPhatter and the Drifters, and Thurston Harris. So this is very, very cool. I love Bobby Day, and this is a great record.
Cool cover.
Yeah, the cover is really, really cool.
Miss Damn Jewelry. Yes, I have Coltrane, and as a matter of fact, I will show you something I have of Coltrane right now. So my next one is I have John Coltrane's Ballads. This is an, I'm sorry, it's like actually wait, no, it's glossy front. It's gonna look the same. This is amazing. He's a saxophonist, obviously. It's an Impulse reissue. So there's a company called, it's 3 companies, but they're all one. It's QRP, which is a record pressing plant. And then there's Acoustic Sounds, which is the store you buy it from. and then Analog Productions is the label, but they're reissuing these are Analog Productions Impulse reissues, and these are all officially licensed. They're all analog, cut from the tapes. This is unbelievable. The first song is what's it called? First song sets the tone right away. It's like a slow, kind of bluesy jazz. I forget what it is, but it's unbelievable. It's one of my favorites. And if I ever need something like kind of relaxing and slow, it's like I always go to that one. That's the one to go with. But it's so good. But these companies are just reissuing these old records, that haven't had a reissue in a long time, or haven't had a quality reissue in a long time. A lot of these tapes were just put in the warehouse somewhere where they just cut a digital file, and then they use that to do just the generic $20 reissue records in throughout when vinyl was dying in the 90s or even the early 2000s. But I think they're starting to catch on now to what people want, and they're willing to pay a little bit more than $20 for something that's good quality. So you can't miss on that. You can't miss on that title, and you can't miss on any Coltrane, at least until he started that improvisation avant-garde stuff in like the 70s that some of them kind of went with. Miles Davis did a little bit of it too. It's not my cup of tea, that stuff, but some people might like it.
I've heard lots of good things about those reissues, and I think that it's nice that some of these records that are becoming harder and harder to find to get an original press, they're reissuing them, and like Blake said, they're quality reissues, so they're worth paying a little bit more for. I've been finding a lot of reissues recently of a lot of 50s groups that were reissued in the 80s, but some of these 50s groups are becoming harder and harder to find if you want an original press of something, and in good shape too, because I think then people probably didn't take care of their records like they do now. So I think some of these reissues can be really a good bang for your buck if you're looking for some of these groups.
Well, even price wise, original ballads, we're paying hundreds of dollars, and even more if it's in really clean, nice, playable shape, or even in some rare cases it's sealed, which I don't know. I don't know if you can find any, but there might be some out there. Or you can just spend $34 on a reissue that honestly sounds quite good because of the mastering technology they have now is a little bit better, I would say, than what they did back in 1960, whatever it was. So I think you're going to see the original prices for originals maybe go down a little bit because they're starting to, there's plenty of reissues out there for everybody to buy, and nobody wants to spend $100 for something they can get for $30.
I agree. I was just looking up a couple of the albums that I am going to show today, and one of them I'll show in a minute. I was looking for an original. I've been looking for an original for a while, just because I wanted to compare the two between the reissue and the original, and it is listed at $250. That's what that record's been selling for, so it's pretty hard to find. Now, Auntie Christie has a great question here. She's asking, if an album doesn't have a plastic cover, do you buy special plastic covers for your favorite albums?
Yeah, pretty much. I get the outer sleeve to cover this, and then the vinyl goes into a rice paper inner sleeve, which keeps it nice. It's anti-static too, so you don't have to worry about that as well.
Yeah, I like the anti-static sleeves, and I just get the plastic poly sleeve. You can buy a whole pack of, I think, 100 on Amazon for a good price, or go to your local record store, because some local record stores do have some of that kind of thing for sale. So the next album I'm going to show is the Mellow Kings, and oh, I love the Mellow Kings. This was another one I picked up recently, and it is an original press, and I've been lucky as of late finding these original presses online, and people just don't know that they have an original press. So the Mellow Kings are a fantastic vocal group harmony. They were founded in 1956 in Mount Vernon, New York. And this, of course, features their hit song, Tonight, Tonight, which, if you have not heard, is absolutely fantastic. So this is actually in the shrink, which is pretty amazing. I mean, it was opened, but it still has the shrink and the price tag. Now, Tonight, Tonight peaked at number 95 in 1961 on the charts. And I just think that this album is fabulous. It's got Tonight, Tonight, and then Chip, Chip, and so many other great songs by the Mellow Kings. So if you love vocal group harmony, you really, really well love the Mellow Kings.
Let me see. Okay, so another one I have. I do like jazz trumpet, jazz saxophone are all good, but I really like jazz guitar. And introducing Kenny Burrell is pretty good. He's still alive. I think he's about 90 years old now. He was from, where is he from? I can't remember. I'm looking it up real quick. I think he's from New York, but I'm not sure. But definitely the jazz guitar genre of jazz has like a very bluesy feel. I mean, most of hard bop jazz has a bluesy feel, a bluesy kind of influence, but guitar really does. And if you don't, sometimes jazz with trumpets and saxophones can hit really hard, high notes, but the guitar stuff is very relaxing and very smooth. And so if you ever come across this or ever want to listen to something that's really kind of calm and relaxing, Kenny Burrell or my next record will are easy hits for that. But once again, these come off of the Blue Note reissues, the Tone Poet series, which is a different series. The difference between the classic record series is the classic record series has some of the major hits that have probably been reissued before, and they're just reissuing it in a more affordable fashion. The Tone Poet series are records that probably haven't had a reissue. And what they do is they're a little bit more expensive, but they put them in this tip-on jacket, these really high quality, like hard stock covers. And on the inside, you have wonderful photographs of there we go. Wonderful photographs of the actual recording, which are unbelievable. And they're really high quality. And they're really nice to look at, along with the liner notes in the back, the paragraphs. You can read all about the recording and the story about how it was made and everything. So Kenny Burrell is unbelievable. If you ever want to listen to jazz guitar, I would suggest looking him up, or the next person I'll come up with after Katie's done.
And I've heard quite a bit about that Tone Poet series, and I know that Adam has featured several people on his Cocktails and Vinyl that have talked about how good the Tone Poet series is. So that's something I'm going to look into next.
Very good.
And I see Dolores has a great question. We have several questions coming in the chat here. So I know Blake has built his own stereo, but what record player would you recommend for those that can't build one? So what do you recommend, Blake?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't really build anything. It's kind of just piecing different components together, I don't think it's a bad deal to just find like your turntable, the Fluance. Is that what it is?
Fluance. Yes,
that's a good one to that's even above a starter. I think that's a pretty good turntable. I would have that, and I would have it go into you can find anything. There's lots of, you can go to Goodwill and find an old like Sony receiver that has a phono input, and then hook it up to, some speakers that you can find anywhere. And I would just start from that. Don't start heavy into it. Don't spend a lot of money at the beginning, maybe like $200, find something that gets it going, and then just go from there. That's what I did.
Absolutely. And I started out with a Crosley too. Crosley has done great things to boost people getting back into records and boost the vinyl resurgence and help a lot of local record stores. if I were starting again, I would start with something like the Fluance, just a little bit higher quality than the Crosleys, because overall that will give you a little bit of a better start and maybe enjoy vinyl a little bit more because the sound quality will be just a little bit better than something with built-in speakers. But there's a lot out there.
And honestly, the turntable really doesn't matter as much as the cartridge that you're using, as well as the stylus. You can have an okay turntable, but have a stylus that or a cartridge that produces pretty good sound. I mean, you can have a great turntable with something that's not that so good, and it won't. And you got to bottleneck yourself. You know what I mean? So I would just start off with something simple, and then go from there. Definitely.
And you can get with the Fluance turntables, you can look up online, but I bought mine with just the basic cartridge that came in it, and I upgraded to an Ortofon Red, and you can do more research into that, but they now come with various cartridges, and I think you can get the black standard, the Ortofon black on one of their turntables. So you can go and kind of select what you want online when you do some more research into it, because all of that can get a little bit more complex.
And one of the terrible things about this whole thing is you listen to something, you buy something like a cartridge, and then it's almost like you can never fully be satisfied. And you got to accept that, because it's not always going to sound perfect. And even I was watching a video about a guy that has this huge, probably millions of dollars in stereo gear. He built a whole room in his house just for his stereo gear. And it's on YouTube. Maybe I'll have Jamie post it or something. I don't know. But you could tell he wasn't too satisfied completely with what he had. After all the fabrication that he did and the customization and everything, it's never gonna be perfect. And so you just have to be okay with it.
And that's kind of the fun of going down this whole world of being interested in the vinyl. It's not just about the music, but you can really curate your system to sound exactly how you want by changing small things, like even the record mat makes a difference sometimes. I've gone through 3 or 4 record mats, and I'm convinced that my acrylic record mat sounds better than the cork one I had versus the leather one I had. I mean, it's all just a fun game of playing around with things. I mean, I've even heard some people switch cables, and they are convinced that this cable sounds better, but it's all what sounds good to you. And it's all, again, about, I think, enjoying the music and just loving artists. Now, Dee has a good question for us. She says, how do you know if something is an original press?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. They're usually on every record. On every record, there's like on this Kenny Burrell, there's a little catalog number here. You can barely see it. There's a trash truck outside. I'm sorry about this.
That's okay.
There's a website called Discogs where you can punch in that number and you can basically find out if it's original. Sometimes you have to look at the actual record. So when you look at the record on the inside, which is like right on the wax part, where the record, the stylus will run out after it's over, after your record's done, there's a number in there. And then if it doesn't have like an RE, that means it's not a reissue, usually. But you can also punch in that number that's on the record into Discogs as well, and then it'll come up with the whatever pressing it is, or if it's original or not. I mean, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's easy to look up the matrix number and find that out on Discogs, but you can also look for things on the label. For example, I've got Miss Etta James here. This is the 1963 reissue, and I know this is a reissue because of the way the cover is. So the original did not have the high fidelity on the bottom. It just had the Crown records, and you can also look up the label, knowing which label it was on originally. And sometimes, too, you can type in, like Crown, for example, was the label Miss Etta James was on. You can type in Crown discography, and you can find out what label changes were made over the years and at what time. And then you can look up that artist and say, okay, this song came out on this album at this date. So this label has to be the right label. So there's several ways, but the matrix number and Discogs are very, very helpful, like Blake said. And then just looking up some of the album covers and finding, you know, slight changes in color or design or labels, that kind of thing. And he's coming back in with another great question. He said, what is Discogs? What would you describe Discogs as? I kind of call it like a Wikipedia for records. But what do you think?
That's a great way of calling it what it is. It's a catalog. It's you know, just like there's a book catalog for all the books that have been printed. There's one for records too. And it has everything in there. Even the most obscure, random records that probably only exist in a, you know, in some producer's office somewhere that was never released. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, Discogs has everything. It's really amazing.
And not just and not just vinyl, tapes, CDs, everything, every type of media. Sorry to cut you off on that.
Oh no, that's okay, Blake. That's exactly it. They have a lot of good physical media. So Blake, is it my turn to show a record, or did you show?
Turn. I think it's your turn.
Okay, so let me show this next record here. This is the Dells, and I absolutely love the Dells. There's something about the vocal group harmony that is just amazing on this record. Now, the Dells were formed out of Illinois in 1952. They were originally the L-Rays. A lot of these 50s groups had different aliases, and they recorded under different names. So sometimes it is hard to kind of track them down, but you can look it up online. And this has their hit song, Oh, What a Night. And if you have not heard Oh, What a Night, you are missing out. This is just an amazing, amazing record. And Oh, What a Night hit number 4 on the R&B charts. And this is just a amazing record. This record was one, again, that, like Blake's talking about, you can spend several hundred on. This was on VJ. This is an original press. And again, I just happened to find it. I was very lucky for like $4 or $5 online. I don't think the person knew what they had. But usually you can find these records as reissues, and this is something that's great. I don't know if they have an exact reissue of this album or if Oh, What a Night is on other compilation albums of the era, but you can look for that, and that really is good because that record is going to be pretty expensive online, so it's nice when you can find some of these reissues.
All right, so just keeping it going with the jazz guitar is Grant Green. Grant Green is another one. He's probably, I would say I like his stuff better than Kenny Burrell's stuff. But he is unbelievable. He's got, I mean, these guys, they all played on each other's records. So I had that Sonny Clark album. Well, he was in this, playing piano. Okay? I'm not sure who these other guys are. I think I've heard of Lou Hayes and Sam Jones. But they all played on each other's stuff. It wasn't like a money, who's going to get paid what, greed fest like music is today. These guys all just loved playing their music. They had creativity drive, and they just made whatever they wanted. And they all played on each other's stuff. And it was really special. I don't think a lot of music, I don't think we'll have a time of music like this ever again. I think it's too big of a business now. But, you know, it's still a business, and it's unfortunate in some cases, but we still get to enjoy great stuff like this, that they're reissuing it. It's another Tone Poet, by the way, too. So really happy about this, to find this stuff. He's got a couple coming out. His most famous is it's coming out here in this month. I got to try to talk Jamie into me buying it. It's Idle Moments, I think. But that's coming out soon, so I'm really excited about that.
And is that going to be a release that you can buy off of their website, or do you have to go to like a record store day?
You know, Amazon's been carrying the Tone Poets as they're released, as well as the classic series. I buy a lot of stuff from. There's a record store in town down the road, in a city next to us, that has that brings in the the acoustic sounds, Decca reissues, the acoustic sounds, Impulse reissues like the Coltrane I showed you. They also carry the Tone Poets and the classic series that have been coming out. So I go down there and buy them sometimes too. I've also ordered stuff from his name is Mike, and he's the owner of the In Groove in Phoenix, Arizona, the record store. He has a YouTube channel that he's got a great business model. He's a very business savvy guy because he educates his customer base. I mean, the only reason I really is into jazz is because I was just listening to him and he was talking about how great everything is. And I said, well, heck, I guess I'll buy one and see what it's like. And it's like, it's awesome. He's right. So, it's pretty special that even if you have all these questions, there's answers out there for you if you want to get into something. He does all sorts of stuff, and he's really into records. And I'm sure he opened a record store just because he loves records so much. And you think my stereo is something? You got to see this guy. He spends hundreds of thousands on stuff. So it's unbelievable the kind of how deep he's gone into it.
He in the Groove is amazing. I follow him because of Blake now, and I love his YouTube channel. He's got some really, really good things. I think they were doing a live for Record Store Day, and I followed that, I think, on YouTube. There are just so many wonderful vinyl accounts on YouTube. I'll try to link some down below. And Adam is fantastic. He's in the chats. If you don't know Adam from Record Crate, he's great and just wonderful. So the next record that I have is really fantastic. And I was excited to get this because I love Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry will always be one of my very favorite guitarists. I just think he is amazing. And this is my favorite Chuck Berry album, 1 Dozen Berries. This, if you have not heard this, is just phenomenal. Now, Chuck Berry is from St. Louis, Missouri. And what's cool about Chuck Berry is you can actually go visit Blueberry Hill, where he played a lot of shows. You can visit all in the Delmar Loop. They've got an amazing, amazing museum of Chuck Berry memorabilia in Blueberry Hill, and you can eat and have a great meal. And they've got vintage vinyl records across the street that has a lot of Chuck Berry stuff. But this is an amazing record. This came out in 1958. And of course, this rock and roll music, which is featured on this album, reached the top 10 in the charts. This has all kinds of great songs: Sweet Little 16, Blue Feeling, Oh Baby Doll, Reelin' and a Rockin'. I mean, Chuck Berry, just there are no words for this record. It kind of speaks for itself. It's just absolutely amazing.
So for my next one, this is probably one of my favorite jazz records that I've been able to come across. Donald Byrd in Flight. He's a jazz trumpet player. And he plays, there's a famous song that he's played. I don't think it's his song. It's called Little Boy Blue or Little Girl Blue. It's mislabeled on here as Little Boy Blue, but it's really Little Girl Blue because I have an Ella Fitzgerald record where she plays it. She sings it. So, it's got lyrics too, but he plays it on the trumpet with his band. And it's like, you have Jackie McLean, who I have some of his records. I have Hank Mobley, Duke Fearson, and that's all I know off of her. But this is unbelievable. I mean, I think he's still alive, or he just passed away. I can't remember. I looked it up, but I can't remember. But this is, the cover's cool too. And these Blue Note covers with the catalog number with the Blue Note, it's just really classy and awesome to look at. And it's another Tone Poet. Okay, it's got the thick cardboard stock, and it's unbelievable. If you ever listen to this, Little Girl Blue, or the second track on the album, is just unbelievable. So I highly suggest you check it out.
I am learning so much about jazz through Blake, because that's not an area of music that I've listened to a whole lot of. And it's kind of fun when you talk to other people that are into music and into vinyl. You learn all kinds of new things about music, and then you have a list that you want to go listen to. And then you get into a whole nother area of collecting and vinyl and listening, and it's just really, really fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, I want to mention. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't...
There's a guy. He's an Instagram. It's Jazz Saraswati. It's JAZZSARASWATI. And his name is Joe Harley, and he oversees the mastering of all these Blue Note reissues, classic series, Tone Poet series, and everything. And he has an Instagram account. He's only got 2,200 people following him, but he basically hints of what they're mastering. So what's going to come out 3 months from now. He shows video of like the master tape on the deck as they're mastering it, as the lathes cutting
Oh, wow.
the lacquer and stuff. And so I'm on there. I'm always on there looking, and he always posts stuff because he's in the studio of the guy who's mastering it, which his name is Kevin Gray, which is very famous, very high recognized mastering engineer. And so I always look at his thing, and I'm just like, oh, look cool. He's got the master tape right there, and it's cutting what it's playing right into the lacquer, and that's going off to the pressing plant where the records are pressed. And so if you ever, I should probably I'm going to join. I'm going to type it as Instagram.
Yeah, put it into the chat, because that is amazing, Blake. I would love to follow that account. I had no clue that he was out there. That is very cool. And of course, we've all heard a lot about Kevin Gray. I follow an account recently that I found, and I'll have to type this in the chat too. But there's actually a vinyl record pressing plant here in Jacksonville. I didn't know they existed, but it's called Vinyl Record Pressing, I think, is just the name of it. And they don't show what they're pressing. I think they press a lot of indie bands and that kind of thing, small records, but they always show the colors that they're pressing. And I found them through TikTok, and then I found out that they actually are about 10 minutes away from me. So it'd be really cool to do an interview with them. Of course, I don't know that they will have me, because I know some of these pressings can be kind of hush-hush and secretive until they're released, but I think it would be very cool.
Well, I think there's always been a plant in Jacksonville, because I looked up, old classic rock records, and, sometimes they'll say this was pressed at the plant in Jacksonville, or the Terry Halt pressing plant, or, something like that. But I know that, like, the pressing plant, one of the best in the world, is RTI, which is in, I think, the City of Industry here in Southern California. And it's not a big operation. It's a very modest sized plant. But I have a feeling that these plants are going to get bigger, because right now they're not even giving a timetable for future releases of even the Tone Poet series, because I think they're so behind schedule. They don't want to say this will come out on April or December 10th. Because they'll probably be late, and it probably won't come out until February, So they're just saying to be determined for everything.
Well, I think a lot of the records that were set to release in Drop 1 got posted or postponed to Drop 2. And I think that's probably because just so many of the pressing plants are overwhelmed. And I know one of the bigger pressing plants, I think, burned down in California, I was reading about a while ago. So I'm sure that's backed up a lot of the records that are set to release.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me.
So the next record that I have, I recently found, and I posted about this on Instagram. Actually, my dad found this. He came to visit last weekend, and we were in a record store, and he saw this and said, "Hey, is this any good?" And I'm like, about fell on the floor. This is the Chirping Crickets. And Buddy Holly is probably one of the first artists I got into when I started getting into early rock and roll and, of course, 50s and 60s music. And I love the Crickets. This is a original press of this album. It's a UK original from 1957. So this is on the Coral label. So this is the UK issue of this record. And I just think this is so cool. This has Oh Boy on it. Of course, I don't know if I could pick a favorite Buddy Holly song. It's too bad that he died as early as he did, because he's just, to me, an amazing, amazing artist. Oh Boy was number 10 on the charts, and that's featured here on this record, The Chirping Crickets. Love this.
That's really cool. I remember, I think you posted about that. You're super excited to find that.
I was like, oh man, I can't believe I found this, because I've not found very many Buddy Holly records out in the wild.
I've never found them. I've never even seen them, to be honest. I'm sure they're just really too hard to find. It's very sought after stuff of his. Okay, so my next one is, so I've done with pretty much all my jazz. Not all, I have more jazz than that, but that's the ones I wanted to show. But as the 60s wound down and the 70s began, they started doing some improvisations. Like I remember, until I said earlier that, Miles Davis and Coltrane, they started doing that avant-garde kind of like really improvisational jazz, which is not really, it just doesn't sit with me really well. It kind of doesn't relax me. It doesn't go anywhere with me. But this does. This is Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, and this is the reissue of the Analog Productions, which is the company in Kansas that presses these high, analog tape mastered, high quality audiophile type pressings. Right. This is probably beyond, it's probably beyond what my system will really even tell compared. Can even. I don't think you'll hear much of a difference when you listen to this compared to like some of the other ones. But this is a 45 RPM, 2-disc, and I kind of like splurged on this. I paid a little bit, for it. So, but as the 60s wound down, Herbie Hancock started doing like a jazz funk kind of sound. So he brought in the synthesizers, he brought in that digital kind of funky sound, with the freaking keyboard that looks like a guitar, and all that stuff. And he just jammed. And this is out of this world. Like my kids, I play this in the car for them sometimes, and they just love it because it has got a good beat. It is unbelievable. So if you ever, go look this up, like write it down, look it up and listen to the first track, Chameleon, which basically takes up side A of the 45 RPM record I have here. This is out of this world. Unbelievable. I love it so much. The cover is unbelievable too. It's very like
the cover is fantastic.
Pretty much is what I could say about it. But he's still live. He's still making music, and he's got a few like he's got a few live videos on YouTube of him playing this. So I mean, go look it up. It's unbelievable, this stuff. And on 45 RPM, it's for the difference between 45 is the speed. 45 RPM allows a little bit more room in between the grooves, so you can cut. I don't know if you can cut it a little bit hotter, but the sound is a little more booming. There's more bass. There's more dynamic range, as far as I can tell and what I've heard. And so it costs a little bit more. It's going to give you 2 discs of what would have been a single disc record, and all of the the other things that they do, the quality control, stuff like that. But it is booming. I'll say that. It's a booming record. It's unbelievable.
I'm going to have to listen to that now, Blake. Blake's entering
really
into a whole new world of music I'm excited about. And Nate from New Zealand has a great question for you. He says, have you heard of Mira Mabeka? She is one of my all-time favorites.
I haven't. Let me put it in my notes.
That is something I think you and Nate would have very similar tastes in music. And yeah, let me throw that back up on the screen for you there, Blake. Here is the name, Mira Mabeka. I think I'm saying that correctly. But Nate loves soul and some jazz. And so he really would be someone that I think you guys would have amazing tastes in music with.
I got it in my notes of things to explore.
Yes, and I've got a lot of notes. I'm taking notes on my little legal pad here so I can find some more music as well. The next record I have is the Impalas, and I love this record. I first heard this on 50s on 5. Now, I do love my Sirius XM subscription when I don't have vinyl with me in the car. And this song came on, and I knew I had to find it on vinyl. And this is Sorry I Ran All the Way Home. And this came out in 1959. Now, this is just a fantastic record. The Impalas are kind of neat because they were discovered by disc jockey Alan Freed, who we all know and love. If you love 50s, you know Alan Freed. And this song was number 14 on the R&B charts. Sorry I Ran All the Way Home which is a fun little song. I put this on my stories quite a bit, but this is on Cub, and this isn't a first press of this. And I was just really, really excited to find this not too long ago online. That's one of the fun things is you can just start searching records, and sometimes you'll come across some of these 50s groups, and they'll listed as not the record name. They'll just be listed as like vintage vinyl or old vinyl. You know, they think no one wants this anymore. And yes, a lot of people do want it. And it's a really, really good record.
All right. Okay. So moving out of the jazz genre and into the rock, classic rock genre, I have become a big Rush fan. Not for everybody. Some people don't really care for him. He's got kind of a high-pitched voice, but being a new bassist or bass player or attempted bass player, I have come to love Rush, and I like Geddy Lee a lot. He's one of my favorite artists. And what I like about Rush so much, especially on this, you know, one of my favorite songs on this is Xanadu. The bass that he plays, if you ever see him play bass, it's out of this world how good he is. And he's very nobody talks about how good of musicians that Rush is, or are, I should say. They never really, I mean, they didn't even get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame until, you know, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. But Rush is good. And, you know, their lyrics are good. You know, they're not the deepest stuff ever, but it's good. You know, Neil Peart, the drummer, did all the most of the writing, but they kind of collaboratively did everything. Big Rush fan. Wish I would have seen Rush in concert. Very disappointed that I got into music so late, and obviously now it's too late with Neil Peart's passing, or Peart, I should say. I don't know, Peart, whatever. But yeah, so I have a few more Rush albums to go through too. So I'll talk more about Rush next in the next one.
I love Rush. My best friend loves Rush, and it would have been so cool to see them live. I agree. Some of these artists, and so sad that they're passing away before we get a chance to see them live. Now, the next album I have that I want to show, I'm very excited about this one too, is the Jumping Jacks. Now, I believe they only had one album. They had a few 45 singles that were released, but this is the only album that I know of attributed to the Jacks. And again, this vocal group harmony, guys, there's something about this R&B harmony that's just absolutely amazing. I mean, this was when you needed just a street corner and a couple of guys, and not a whole lot of other frills to go along with the music, and it's just phenomenal. So this is the Jumpin' Jacks. This came out in 1956. This is a group out of LA, and this has one of their hit songs, Wiggy Waggy Woo. Now, I do believe several other groups covered this. I want to say, was it the Skyliners and the Cadets also covered this? I love Wiggy Waggy Woo, but this is Jumping with the Jacks. This is on Crown. This is a record that's pretty hard to find as well. And again, I've gotten lucky too recently at some antique stores where these were just in crates for like $5. And I was so excited to find this. But the Jacks just have a really unique sound, and I definitely recommend listening to the Jacks.
So keeping on with the Rush, Moving Pictures, obviously, it's probably their best album.
Yeah, I agree.
Consensus would be that it's their best album, but there's so many good ones. Moving Pictures is awesome. You can tell that they're starting to, as they got into the 80s, he started using keyboards and synthesizers a little bit more and more of that kind of stuff. Not for everybody, but it's incorporated to this album pretty good. Every song in this album is awesome. Tom Sawyer starting it off is just out of this world. But you can really, it's almost like, going back to the bass talk about how I like the bass so much in that song, in the band. It's almost like the bass is like, it's like lead bass. Like the bass is carrying everything with it, and the guitar is in the background. I don't think it's the same for a lot of other types of music. As far as alternative rock or other kinds of rock, it's like the bass is really at the forefront and driving everything with it, especially with Rush. So one of my favorites. It's actually one of the first albums I bought at a record store. This one. So I've had this for quite a while.
Moving Pictures is so good. I would say that's probably my favorite Rush album as well. And Tom Sawyer was the first Rush song I heard, and I definitely fell in love. They're a fantastic group. I don't have that on vinyl yet, so I'm still looking for it. One day I'll track it down. So the next album I have is the Skyliners, and this is on Calico, and it's got that really, really cool airplane graphic on the front. The Skyliners are a group out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and again, they just have a really, really unique sound. I know a lot of these vocal group harmonies can sound similar, but they're different because some people have high falsetto voices, some have a little lower register, and it just makes for a very interesting variety among all of these doo-wop groups. Now, this came out in 1959, and it reached number 12 on the Hot 100. Not this particular album, but the song that was on this album, Since I Don't Have You, reached that on the Billboard Hot 100. And this is just a really fantastic album if you can track it down.
I love those covers. I think I saw that one time in a bin at like an estate sale one time, and I wanted to buy it just because it had the cool TWR airplane in the back of it, but it was like destroyed, and so I was like, forget it, But I love the cover.
The cover is great, and you're right. A lot of these '50s records are scratched. I mean, beyond even being able to enjoy them, which is just sad. But if you can find them, they're worth rescuing.
I tell you, Katie, if you were out here, your collection would grow exponentially because there's so much of that kind of genre of music out here that nobody wants. You would love it. It would be unbelievable. You'd come home with carloads full of stuff. And I tell this to Jamie all the time. I'm like, if Katie was out here, that whole bin would go with her, and it would be like $1 each, and they're all in nice shape.
And then I would have to buy another apartment with a second room so I could just have a room for records.
Pretty much. This is a lot of it out here. I sent you a bunch of those.
Yes.
Before. That was all in a crate
I can't believe.
for like $40, and it came with a sealed copy of Sound of Silence by Simon & Garfunkel, and it was just in there somewhere, and I ended up just selling that, and it paid for the whole crate, and I gave you a bunch, and I kept a few, but there's tons of it out here, and nobody wants it because everybody's looking for a Rush and like Led Zeppelins and stuff. But there is good music out there. I have a little bit of that big band jazz too.
Yeah, and that's the thing is here everyone's looking for 70s and 80s music. So pretty much all of these groups are in the dollar bin, and people don't realize how valuable some of these records can be because they're just becoming harder and harder to find in good shape. And Blake sent me some amazing Guy Lombardo that I've just enjoyed listening to. It's fantastic. And I can't believe he found it in a bin for like $1.
So I have another Rush, Permanent Waves. Probably there's my second favorite album of theirs. It's unbelievable. It has Spirit of the Radio, Jacob's Ladder, which is another good song. I haven't heard like an album that wasn't very good with Rush. I don't have them all yet, but I have a lot of them, and it's I listen to Geddy Lee do interviews all the time. He always seems like he's so down to earth and not full of himself. Very successful artist. It's just like I have a lot of respect for that band because they were able to stay together for that long without any, bitterness or lawsuits or any of that stuff. I have a couple Pink Floyds and stuff ready, and they have a whole history of lawsuits and bad blood and everything. And this Rush was able to stay together through the whole time. And I was listening to an interview, and he was talking about when they were talking about crediting, for songs, and they said, you know what? Let's just split it 1/3 each person. We're all doing this together. who cares who does a little bit more than the other on this song or that song? You know, let's just do this, and then we never have to talk about it again. And I think they were able to find the formula that really worked. So that's my last Rush one, though. Good stuff.
Very good stuff. And that is amazing. I mean, talking about Rush and how well they got along, because if you look at other groups, they had so many problems. I mean, even Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, you look at them and the amount of issues they had, particularly with money, was a big problem. And you can watch, there's a movie that came out, Jersey Boys, that is phenomenal, but it really does delve into their whole secret issues of the band that most people probably don't know about.
Yep.
So the next record I have is the Clovers, and the Clovers probably are one of my favorite doo-wop groups, but it's really hard to pick because there's something, again, about this vocal group harmony. I can't explain what it is when you're listening to it, but it's just magic. And this record is phenomenal. This is on Atlantic, and this has so many good songs on it. Ting-a-ling, Yes, It's You. I Played the Fool, Devil or Angel is on here. Now, the Clovers were a group out of Washington, D.C., and this record came out in 1956, and this has Devil or Angel on it, as I mentioned. Now, that was also recorded by Bobby V, I'm sorry. And this was number 3. That song was number 3 on the R&B chart. So this is really a fantastic record. I think the Clovers did it first. I think Bobby V recorded it and had a hit with it as well. And then other groups did Devil or Angel because it's just such a good song. But if you haven't heard the Clovers, I highly, highly recommend looking for that album.
Yeah, that's cool. I think almost all the records you said, I think I've seen before, like it have been somewhere.
Wow, that's amazing because these are hard to find now.
Sometimes I have to just pick up if it's at a yard sale or something, and I'll get it cheap and I'll just send it your way. If it's cheap. Okay, so yeah, so now I'm going to get into like progressive rock stuff that I've kind of. People might have heard of before, but I had not heard of it before, or him or them. I haven't heard of them before I started listening to the vinyl. And so this is the Alan Parsons Project, Eye in the Sky, which if you listen to Sirius, the first song, it's probably one of the most well-known like sports anthems for like the beginning of a sporting event that you've ever heard. And Alan Parsons was a recording engineer who was on the team of recording engineers, the engineers that worked on the recording of, sorry, the trash truck is here again. They worked on the Beatles recording of Abbey Road.
Oh, wow.
The Beatles recording of Let It Be, which was recorded, I think, on the rooftop somewhere, I believe. And then he was the recording engineer on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And so after all that happened, he formed this band with a man named Eric Wolfson. I think his name's Eric Wolfson. And they made this band called Alan Parsons Project. And they do a lot of progressive rock stuff. It's awesome. It's so good. This album is probably my favorite. There's 3 of them that are really good. There's one album that he did. I didn't pull it, but I'll tell you about it. There's one album that he did where he basically is themed after Edgar Allan Poe. So each song is like an Edgar Allan Poe, after a story. One of the stories, you know, the Fall of the House of Usher, The Raven. I can't think of the other ones, but I don't know. It's really good though, and that's a really good one too. And I remember I was in a teacher meeting once, and it was like the beginning of the school year. And this teacher was freaking out. She's like, I gotta teach English, you know, and freshman English. And in freshman English, they learned some Edgar Allan Poe stuff. And so I was like, well, why don't you just? Alan Parsons had this album that was basically about all these Edgar Allan Poe stories, and I'm like, I'll just use that as like the difference that hooks kids in to learn about Edgar Allan Poe. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea." I'm like, "Oh, it was a good idea, wasn't it?" Sometimes I surprise myself, but hey, whatever.
I can see kids being really, really interested in Edgar Allan Poe because of the music. And I love when teachers do that. I remember our teacher in freshman English, she wanted to teach us about Shakespeare. Of course, everyone thinks that Shakespeare is boring when you're in high school. And she let us actually interact with other students and reenact Romeo and Juliet. And she gave us fake swords. And I mean, the kids were immediately hooked. They thought this was the coolest thing. And I have to owe my love of Shakespeare to my English teacher, by doing something really cool and creative like that.
Yeah, you have to have that. And I work in the inner city, and you have to have something that hooks the kids in, because they'll just be on their phones, or they won't come to class. And there's really nothing you can do about it if they don't. So it's just the way it is. You got to hook them in somehow with something.
That is awesome, Blake. Yes, I agree. Now, this next album that I have is really cool, and it's got a neat story. So this is Dance by the Light of the Moon by the Olympics on Abervie. And the Olympics are really interesting because they actually have several other aliases that they recorded under. One of them being not only the Jayhawks and the Vibrations, but they masqueraded as the Marathons. So there's a pretty cool story to this. If you look on this album, you will see on the bottom here that it says the Olympics, and then it says Peanut Butter by the Marathons. Well, they had a recording contract with Abervie, but they actually renamed themselves the Marathons and secretly went to record this novelty song, Peanut Butter, on the Checker label. Well, Abervie found out about it, and they were not too happy, and this whole thing ensued after they found out that they were trying to do like double recording contracts. So I find that really interesting, and I have the original Peanut Butter album by the Marathons, which did release later on, but I think that this is pretty cool that this album here has the Olympics, and it's got the Peanut Butter song with the name The Marathons. Now, this was released in 1961, and this song, the Peanut Butter song, which is a fun little novelty song, hit Hot 100 charts and stayed on there for quite a while. It's just a fun little song. So if you've never heard Peanut Butter, again, it's one of those weird novelty songs that most people probably wonder, why was this even made? But it's just a little fun jam to listen to. So definitely recommend listening to Peanut Butter by the Marathons. And of course, this has Dance by the Light of the Moon on it by the Olympics, which is just phenomenal.
That's funny that why was something even recorded? We have this, I remember we found inside of an old record, we found like a record that was like an advertising record about like chicken dinner or something like that, about this company that made chicken dinners. And it was like a jingle about having chicken for dinner or something. It's on like a piece of paper, and it's like wax pressed into like a piece of paper. It plays terribly, but you're just kind of like, this is interesting. I've never seen anything like this. But
that's wild. Have you seen the shaving records on paper, sort of like the postcard records, but they came with shaving kits back in the 50s?
No.
So I have one of those. I have to send you a picture, but you get the shaving kit, and then this record would come with it, and it's music to shave by. And it's just this little flimsy, like cardboard, postcard, cereal box kind of record. It sounds horrible, but it's funny because they have a lot of big, names of the 50s recording on this little record. And I guess, while you're shaving, you'd put on the record and, fun little marketing thing.
Well, I have no need for that. So, I guess my head, I could shave my head with it, but whatever.
But you have a great beard.
All right. So, actually, the next one is two records, but they're the same one. But I'll show you why. So I have another Alan Parsons project, iRobot, which is my favorite, I think, of their records. iRobot is a it's a very, I don't know, it like pushes boundaries a little bit. It's different. There's a lot of there's a lot of songs in this that sound like you're at like not like a what do they call it, like electronic music kind of thing. It's got a lot of that in it, but it's also got a lot of rock too. It's a very progressive. It's like it's like the definition of progressive rock is the iRobot album. And the one cool thing about this is I had like a couple of copies of this. Honestly, I have a couple of copies of almost everything that I've showed you, especially the Alan Parsons and the Rush stuff. But I have a couple copies of this, and then so a colleague of mine passed away. I coach golf at the high school I teach at, and then there's a coach that coached at a school nearby, and he passed away suddenly. And he had some golf stuff at his house, and his brother called me and asked me if he could donate some of that stuff to my school, and I said sure. So when I got over there, and he had a big he's like, we have some vinyl records too, and I'm like, oh really? Do you? And so I went and looked at the vinyl records, and I was really excited, and then I was really sad because he had his vinyl records in a tote, like not a tote, but like a plastic bin in the backyard, exposed to the elements.
Oh no.
And so I was like, oh man. And so I'm flipping through, and I was able to salvage some of them. And this is one of them I was able to salvage. This is Alan Parsons' project, iRobot, the original MoFi, Mobile Fidelity version of it from the 80s. So you can tell by the original master recording, all the Mobile Fidelities. This is like the early audiophile pressings of records. But you can tell at the bottom of the water damage. Coincidentally, I pull up the record. The record is completely mint condition. It looked like it hadn't even been played.
Wow.
And so a little bit of a warp, but nothing that is too devastating considering he gave it to me. Right. So I dried out. I had the fans going in the garage. I dried out. I took all the sleeve. I took it all out. I put paper towels in the sleeve and then had the fan blowing on them so they dried out. And I was able to, it somewhat resembles a record. There's a little bit of bend there, but, but the record is, it doesn't sound very good for an audiophile pressing. It lacks a lot of mid range. There's a lot of high, really clear high, and some decent bass, but the mid is like gutted. And I had this after the In-Groove guy, Mike, that owns the store in Phoenix, did a video of the best pressings of this record, and he talks about this one. He says the mid range is gone. Like they cut it out, and so it lacks it. And so I put it on, and go figure, the mid range is completely gone. It was completely right. And I was like, it's too bad. This goes for like $130 if it's in nice shape on the secondary market. But, I also found Queen, Day at the Races. I was able to salvage that. I was able to salvage A Night at the Opera.
Oh my gosh.
I was able to salvage Jazz. So all 3 Queen albums I was able to salvage. I don't know why those were the only ones, but I had a lot of stuff. There was a Beatles White album, not an original, but a White album in there. There was a Abbey Road in there that wasn't an original. There was a Dark Side of the Moon that was an original in there. There was a lot of good stuff in there, and it was pretty bummed out that it was they were lost, to be honest. But I was able to save this and a few Queen albums, and so I got them. I was able to keep the sleeve intact and all that stuff, so that was good.
Now, did that Jazz album by Queen have the poster in it?
No, they didn't have the poster.
No, but it was still great that you salvaged it.
The White album had all the posters and stuff, but they were all water damaged. I tried to get them out, and they just came apart, and I was like,
oh man. Well, I showed in that video recently, I found a reissue of the White album and Micanopy, and I didn't get it, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I didn't get it.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. I've done that a few times with stuff, with gear. I was at a yard sale once, and there was some JBL 4301s, which are little bookshelf speakers, about that big or so. They're not big. And he's like, $20, and I was like, okay. And then I pull off the grill, and one of the the big woofer is missing, and I was like, oh. for some stinking reason, I didn't take it home anyway for $20. I could have parted it out and made $200.
Wow.
Little parts. And then I was driving away. I went to the yard sale and I was like, I'm just gonna go back and buy them. They were gone.
Yep, that
8
always.
minutes later, they were gone. I was like, well, that's my fault. Not the end of the world, but it's my fault.
Yep, we all have that
happens.
moment of something that we didn't get, and then either you go back and you're lucky it's there, or it's gone, and then you think about it, and you think about it.
Happens to everybody.
So this next album I have really is the album that I think started my love of vinyl. This is Ragdoll by the Four Seasons. The Four Seasons probably were one of the first groups besides Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry that I really got into, that just made me fall in love with the whole vinyl experience. And this album is phenomenal. This is a mono album. But what's kind of neat about this is an original press, but this is an original press from New Zealand. So for Nate that's in the chat, you're really going to like this, because this is the 1964 New Zealand press of Ragdoll. Now, Ragdoll is one of my very favorite Frankie Valli songs. There's something just so magical about the way that it was written, and I just absolutely love this song. Of course, this has Save It For Me on there, and of course, Bob Gaudio, we all know and love, worked on Ragdoll. Now, the Four Seasons are a group from New Jersey, and Ragdoll definitely reached #1 on the Hot 100, and it stayed there for 2 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. But if you do not have this album, I definitely recommend picking it up. It's not too expensive online. It's pretty easy to find, but the Four Seasons are just classic and very wonderful.
I wish we had Four Seasons here and weather, but it's always sunny and hot here, usually.
99 today, Blake.
Oh my God. Well, I think it's like 70, 75, maybe 74 here. And a nice ocean breeze coming through my door. So I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Oh man, I'm jealous of your weather.
Okay, so my next, so I'm getting to the Pink Floyd now. What can I say? Pink Floyd's Animals is one of their best. I think, in my determination, is when Roger Waters started to assert himself in this band more. Obviously, Dark Side of the Moon was written kind of across the board. Everybody kind of contributed with it. Wish You Were Here, same thing. But this is kind of has the blood of what I know Roger Waters, who he is. This is a anti-establishment, anti-capitalism, business control kind of thing. And it all the song names there's what, pigs. There's what is it? I gotta look it up again. Actually, right here. Pigs on a Wing. You got dogs, pigs, 3 different ones, and sheep. And so it basically lays out what his idea of what the world is. The dogs are the business people. If you listen to the songs, dogs are the business people. The pigs are the politicians, and the sheep are the people that follow the dogs and the pigs, I guess you can say. It's very anti. I mean, it's got Roger Waters' blood all over it, and he is my favorite artist. I have a cool painting of him that a friend painted of him. I'll pull it down and I'll show you guys at the end of this, but he is my favorite. I don't always agree with his political stuff, and you don't have to really appreciate somebody. He's pretty out there in a lot of this stuff, but I don't mind people that want to use their position to be political. I mean, it's their right, and I respect their right to say what they want about whatever it is. They have a different experience than I do on this earth, and good for them to say what they want. So, Animals is unbelievable. Check it out. I played Pigs, 3 different ones for the boys, and they used to sing along with it. So it's one of my favorites.
And like Peterson's pointing out, yes, you can just enjoy the music sometimes. And it is neat when artists use their platform to talk about things that they want and they're passionate about. This next album that I have, and I'm sorry that Louie's barking, but she's very excited about all this music as well. This is the Dell Vikings, Come Go With Me. Now, this is a reissue because, as I mentioned, the original album is really pretty tough to find. This is one I would love to have an original of. This is on the official label, and the original would have come out in the 60s of this. Of course, the first one that's just Come Go With Me with the light blue color would have come out, I believe, in the 50s. But this has pretty much all of the Dell Vikings' biggest hits. The Dell Vikings just are absolutely amazing, amazing, amazing vocal group harmony. And this record is pretty neat because the Dell Vikings were formed in 1955. They were 5 men in the Air Force, and they won a contest while playing in the Air Force, and they got a recording label. And that's really how they became big, is they got that recording label. That was the prize for winning the Air Force musical contest. And they had a hit with Come Go With Me. Everybody knows, I think, Come Go With Me. It's been featured in several movies. And this album is really fun. Now, even the reissue of this is hard to find. I think I had to get this, I want to say, from Germany. Had to come all the way from overseas. So I just love this. And of course, Come Go With Me became a million-seller record in 1957. So this is just fantastic. It's got Come Go With Me, I Want to Marry You, What Made Maggie Run, which that's one of those songs, again, from the 50s. Some of the songs are a little bit comical listening to them because there are a lot of romantic songs of the 50s, and then there's a lot of fun, like, novelty songs. And What Made Maggie Run is definitely one of those comical, like peanut butter. Like, why did they even make this song? But it's so fun to listen to. Whispering Bells, Down by the Stream, Down in Bermuda, Girl, Girl, which this is cool because this has the different version of Girl, Girl. It has the original studio version, not the one that was released to the public. And it's got a different opening when you listen to it. It's got a really, really deep register that they didn't have when they were singing the original. So it's a pretty cool album.
That's cool. Okay, so this is my favorite album of all time, and it's not even close. And Jamie could tell you what it is right now, but it's Pink Floyd, The Wall. The Wall is the best album I've ever heard in my life. It's Roger Waters' masterpiece. He basically wrote the whole thing. I think Comfortably Numb was co-wrote. A few of the songs were like Run Like Hell was co-wrote, but this is a rock opera. This tells a story of somebody similar to Roger Waters. If you don't know who he is, his father was killed in World War II in Italy when he was like 3. And so he's very anti-war, anti-big, government, and it basically tells of a guy that lost his father, who was ridiculed in school, who became a star and basically isolated himself. And it was the whole. I can't even tell you about it. If you don't know about it, just listen to it. It doesn't do it justice. It is the greatest composition I have ever heard in my life, I knew it right away when I first listened to it that it was amazing. And one of the cool things about this copy, I actually have like 7 copies of this album. I have ones with the sticker. They're all first issues. I have some one that's warped. It's in really good shape. It's warped. So if I can get that flattened, I got another good copy. But this one is like my most valuable, I guess you can say, because it is in the dead wax. It's listed as 1A. So it's pressed off of the first lacquer that was mastered. And if you look, there's a website called Pink Floyd Archives, which is it's a catalog of only Pink Floyd stuff. But you go on there and you can look up The Wall, the first issue of The Wall, and you can look up by the dead wax and align it with a big list of, in order, what was pressed in what order. Now, first issues have about 120 or so variations. So you'll have, pressings that have 1A, 1B, 1C, skipping a few, and it goes down to like 1G or something. I don't know. But this one is 4th on the list of first presses. So this is one of the earliest. It's one of the earliest pressed versions of this. I don't even listen to this because it's, it's just like a collector's thing at this point with me. I have 7 copies of it. I'll listen to a better copy that's like a later pressing. I don't know. I can't necessarily tell you that there's a difference between this one and the one that was pressed later. I don't know, but this is just out of this world. Something special for the time it was released. If you haven't heard it, I would listen to it immediately. I listen to it at least once a week, I would say, to Jamie's disappointment. But no, I it's not that I set out to find that. I just end up buying it wherever I see it. You know what I mean? I went to one yard sale. Actually, the guy listed his yard sale. He listed it on Craigslist, and I sent him an email. I was like, "Hey, can I come look at it early?" And he just said, "Sure." And I was like, "Yes." And he had 2 copies. This was one of them.
Wow.
And I got this. I got 2 copies of this. I got the Animals. One of the Animals I have 3 copies of that. And then and he gave me like the whole stack. It was like Led Zeppelin's. It was like probably $300 worth of records, and I got them for $40. $300 like retail. Everything's inflated right now, so it's not really, if you want to buy them at a regular record store, you probably pay $300 for it. But I got them all for $40, so I was pretty stoked about that. But yeah, so
that's amazing, Blake. I mean, The Wall is a phenomenal album. I totally agree. And if you guys have not heard it, definitely listen to it. This next album is probably one of my very favorite albums I own, and that's hard to say because I own so many that I love. That's the cool thing about music, is you just fall in love with so much as you're listening to it. But this album had been on my want list forever, and I'm telling you folks, this is a hard album to get. You can get the reissue of it easily, and you can get it on different compilation tracks, but you will not find this album for... I've seen it selling for under $300. I mean, this is just tough to get. And this is Please Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes on Tamala. And this is just an amazing record. I love the Marvelettes. They are a fantastic group. And this album is just incredible. I mean, I don't have really the words. If you have not heard Please Mr. Postman, definitely go listen to it. But this has I Want a Guy on it, So Long Baby, Happy Days, You Don't Want Me No More, All the Love I Got, I Know How It Feels, I Apologize, which is a phenomenal track. This record is really cool. It came out in 1961. Now, the Marvelettes are a group out of Inkster, Michigan, which is a really random spot. Usually you've got groups coming out of New York and LA, so I thought that was interesting. But this record has the great song, Please Mr. Postman, on it, which was the first Motown record to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for a girl group. So this really is pretty special. And it stayed on there for several weeks, the Hot 100. So I really, really recommend Please Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes. And if you can find it on the wrong side, Tamala label, definitely pick this up because this record is gold and it's definitely pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before. It is good. Definitely good. Okay, so I should mention about The Wall. I was listening to, real quick before it'll segue into the next one, but listening to Bob Ezrin, who's the producer of The Wall, was talking about on Reel to Reel. Did you have like the book Bewitched? Did you have the Reel to Reel that was like the label Reel to Reel, or was it like a copy? Because those not the like the Reel to Reel tapes that are like labels had made them or copied them, those are very valuable. Like Reel to Reel tapes are expensive, and I'll show you at the end. I pulled a few Reel to Reels that I'll show you guys at the end. But I mean, it's crazy how much like a Dark Side of the Moon Reel to Reel tape that's in nice shape will go for buco bucks. And I'll show you one of my Reel to Reels when we're winding down here. So anyway, Bob Ezrin was the producer of The Wall, and I was listening to him talk about his his information about it. He's talking about how he produced it. And this is when they did The Wall, Roger Waters had asserted himself completely into the band, took over very much. And Bob Ezrin would say, Roger would tell him, you know what, your job here is to deal with them while I can make an album, And so I saw somebody posted about Pink Floyd reminds them of their parents' divorce, and it really was like a divorce. It's really sad to see, and it's sad that there's no good live recordings of Pink Floyd other than bootlegs with Roger Waters. I mean, there's some great ones after, like in the 90s and so on, but nothing early. And there's and they did a brief reunion in 2008 for like a cause of some sort. I forget what it was. It was like a peace cause. I don't know. And it was great, but it's not good. It's still not good. And they're releasing Animals, a reissue Animals with a new mix of the album. And there was they couldn't even agree on the liner notes about it. Like Roger Waters had written something up, or somebody had written something up, and Dave, the lead singer, he said, no, this is not okay for me. So, I don't think that album's going to come out. I don't know what's going to happen, but this is in full. It's really bad. It's too bad. Really, it is. I'm happy we got something, great music, but we could have had so much more, and it's disappointing, which leads me to my next album. The final Pink Floyd album with Roger Waters, the final cut. And obviously, you can see here, this was basically a solo album for Roger Waters. He wrote everything. He did everything. And this was, the keyboard, Richard Wright, was fired already. They had random musicians coming in to help with its recording. Everybody was basically being phased completely out. And as you can see here, it's a British military, kind of a military look, right, of medals and ribbons and stuff. So this album was released, and the Falklands conflict with Argentina had fired up with Great Britain. And this is basically just is, what are we doing? Roger Waters saying, I lost my father to the war to end all wars, and now we're back at war. What are we doing? And it's bitter. It is. And I kind of like that stuff. I kind of like sad music. It's music that has big emotions.
I do too. I
love it. Music that gives you the feels, I guess, and not always good feels. And this is one of them. Time has done well with this. It did not do well when it was first released, but it is great. It's almost, people say that it's a sequel to The Wall because it's similar in some aspects, but it's, this and The Wall are really good, and I just like Roger Waters a lot. If you don't like him, you probably won't like it. It's different than what Dave Gilmour has done the years later. Lyrically, it's good. Pink Floyd, musically, David Gilmour was really good. Lyrically, he was not as good. Roger Waters, musically, was not as good. But lyrically, he was very good. And so they kind of fed off of each other. And together, they were great. And then as they kind of separated, they both made good music, but it's never been Pink Floyd, if that makes sense. I'm sure some of you might know what I'm talking about, but that's kind of how I feel about it. That's my take, I should say.
Yes, I agree. I like music that makes you think, that has something thought-provoking to it, and when you listen to it, the whole album tells a story. And sometimes it's not a happy story, but it just really, like Blake says, it makes you feel something. To me, that's also really, really good music.
Yep.
This next album is a classic album for anyone that loves 50s and doo-wop. This is the Duke of Earl, Gene Chandler, on VJ. This is a first pressing of this album. This album's pretty easy to get an original press of, and I just think this is fantastic. Now, this was released in 1962, and Gene Chandler was born in Chicago, Illinois, and this held the #1 spot for 3 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. So that tells you that this was quite a popular song. And if you have a Sirius XM subscription, you listen to 50s on 5, this song comes on pretty much all the time. It's one of those that's just played a lot because it is so good. There's something about the way that his voice is on this and the backing vocals that are just fantastic. So I love Duke of Earl, and I'm so glad to have this. Now, Duke of Earl is the song, of course, we all know off of this, but Night Owl is another one off of the second side of this album I think is really fantastic. And I highly recommend listening to that. And of course, Kissin' in the Kitchen are my two other favorites off of this VJ album.
I've seen the VJ label before. Is that still a label? Or do they?
They're still around. I think that they went out of business, I want to say in the 70s. But
sometimes these big music conglomerates buy up everything. And so like if you wanted to find that as a repress or a reissue, would it be part of like Columbia or one of those big labels or something?
And in the 50s, you see a lot of like the reissues coming out on like I can picture that label clear as day. It's got the little street light on it, and it's a yellow label. And gosh darn, I can't think of it. But like one of those collectible reissue series.
I don't know. I don't know the street light. I feel like I've seen a yellow one before.
Yeah, I think it's Collectibles is the label, but there's a lot of them that will reissue. And you're right. I think that they probably bought out a lot, like Sony bought out tons of stuff.
Okay, so this is actually my last record. I have a few tapes I'll show you too, but Roger Waters, Amused to Death from I think it was like 1992. This is really good for his solo. This is the best of his solo stuff, I would say. I mean, the cover says it all. This was just right after Desert Storm. And once again, Roger Waters is like, why are we at war? And why are we showing it on television for our children to see? And so, and like, there's a couple of parts. Another thing is this was pressed by the Analog Productions company that does the audiophile reissues, and they did this new thing called Q sound, where it like you could hear like it almost sounds like it's quadraphonic, but it's only two channel stereo. So it says in like the notes inside the thing, it says, at this part of the sound of the first song, if you hear the dog bark, because there's like sounds in the beginning as the album gets started, if it sounds like the dog is barking behind you to the left, then your speakers are in sequence or something, or in phase correctly or something like that, right? And go figure, I'm sitting in the middle and it's playing, and yep, the dog sounds like it's behind me. And I don't know how they do that, but it's amazing. And they started doing it with this Q sound, with this reissue of this record. There's a part in this where it's almost like a play-by-play. They get the guy that does the NBA Finals play-by-play. He's got a very distinguished voice. I don't know what his name is, but he's like calling a game, but it's like a ship and a submarine, and they're kind of mocking war. It's like, how big is the explosion going to be? Are those torpedoes going to get to the hull in time? It's like, and he's mocking war, and like, well, why are we at war? And he has that, the only reason we go to war is money for, big corporations and all that stuff. And it's got that kind of feel to it. And it's the same stuff. I mean, it's The Wall, it's Animals, it's all that influence is into this. And I also, when I was with Jamie talking about another record, I got the Jeff Beck record. Jeff Beck plays guitar for him in this album. And even in one of his other, Roger Waters' other solo albums, Eric Clapton plays. So he gets good artists to play for him, and it's special stuff. It really is. I'm really glad I have this, and I'm really, I've been thinking about Roger Waters' tour was postponed, but he just put it back on, and I kind of want to go see him, but he's really old now, and it's like he's like 80 years old, and and I just don't think I'm gonna see what I expect based on his music he's done over the past. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And it's expensive. It's like $300, $400 to go see it. I'd want to sit close. You know, I'm not going to sit up top. I'm going to go close if I'm going to go all in. And you know, I don't think I'm going to go just to, you know, save money. And I could just watch the show on video or whatever. But I'll be okay if I don't go. But you know, I've been thinking about it.
I have tickets to see the Temptations and the Four Tops. Of course, there's only one original member of each group left, and I'm sure that they don't sound at all like they did on my original vinyl, but I just, you know, the tickets were cheap enough that I thought, you know, I want to have this chance to see them in concert. Of course, now it's been delayed due to all the things going on in the world. So I hope that I do get a chance to see them before, you know, the unfortunate and inevitable happens. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. But I have seen Frankie Valli live, and he's one of those artists that, you know, you worry about seeing in concert because you think, okay, he probably will not sound as good. And I know some people have this conspiracy theory that he's lip syncing, but I was third row from the front in that concert, and his voice is incredible. I mean, it's like it was in the 60s. I don't know what he's done, but he sounds amazing. So if you ever get a chance to see Frankie Valli, the tickets are not expensive at all. I think mine were $30, and it's just amazing, amazing show.
Yeah, and my parents went to that Desert Trip concert out in the desert, Palm Springs. And we'll talk about it later, Jamie. But we went up. They went to that concert. It was like the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Roger Waters was there. I forget who else was there. Was it just 4 bands? I can't remember. But and they didn't stay for Roger Waters. And I'm like, they're like, he's too political. Oh, I'm like, come on. He's like the founder, one of the founders of Pink Floyd. Like, and you didn't go stay to see him. But my dad's a big Rolling Stones fan, so, you know, growing up. So I think that's all he really wanted to see, to be honest. But I'm kind of bummed out, you know, that he didn't go see. They didn't go see Roger Waters, because I would have loved to see him, but whatever.
Yeah, Rolling Stones came here a few years ago, and the tickets sold out so fast. There was no way you could get tickets to that concert. Yeah. So the last album I'm going to share today is a favorite of mine. This was one of the first original presses I got of a doo-wop album, and I was so excited to find it. This is Dion and the Belmonts on Laurie, and I love, love, love Dion and the Belmonts. They had several studio albums. I believe this was one of their first, presenting Dion and the Belmonts. Now, they're a group from the Bronx, New York, which a lot of good doo-wop groups came out of New York. And this was released, I believe, in 1959. Now, I Wonder Why is on this album, and it reached number 22 on the Hot 100. And then A Teenager in Love is on this album. So their two biggest hits are on this album, and they're really fantastic. I love the imagery on the back of this. A Teenager in Love reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. And this is just a cool album cover. I love the gold. And of course, absolutely think that this is fantastic. And I believe that this is a mono press as well. But you can't go wrong with Dion and the Belmonts. They've just got a really good sound.
Is that like a vocal artist?
Yes, their vocal group Harmony as well.
You can't go wrong with mono, anything vocal. Vocal music in mono is really good.
It is.
Because the voice just pops out of the speakers.
They really do. And I'm lucky that a lot of these doo-wop groups I've been finding are original mono presses, which is fun. That's why I love that Gene Chandler record, Duke of Earl. It's in mono, and it just sounds incredible. His voice and the backing vocals are just amazing.
But I think most stuff was mono that long ago too, and stereo was really the kind of the new and upcoming thing. But they didn't really even know how to do stereo very well. I know that there's a few albums that are great in mono, and you know, they spent time mixing, recording the mono, and then like one of the producers like spent just a half day the next day mixing stereo, and
you know,
whatever. So I think that's kind of how it was. But mono with vocals. I have a couple Ella Fitzgeralds that are mono, and they're really good.
Oh, Ella Fitzgerald's amazing.
So I have just one couple more things to show really quick though. Here's that art that I had painted of Roger Waters. And so all I said is I gave the guy, it's one of Jamie's friends, old friends. I gave the guy a picture of Roger Waters that I wanted. And I said, just do that black and white kind of contrasty picture, but then put the wall behind him. And so that's kind of what he did. He put his little stamp down here. And it's like a personalized little thing, and I put up on next to. We have one of John Lennon too. It's really good. I don't know. It's another freaking dump truck, killing me here.
That's okay. We've had people weed whacking outside of my court, and I've been hearing it the whole time, and I'm like, oh, this is probably coming through the audio.
Okay, so I have two things to show. Obviously, everybody loves this one. Reel-to-reel tape of Herb Alpert's Whipped Cream, and Other Delights.
Oh, that is a good album.
I have this on tape. I have this on reel-to-reel tape, and then I have this on vinyl too. And so I just buy it whenever I find, wherever I see it, I buy it. And it actually sounds good. That's kind of a gimmick because it's a cool cover, but it actually does sound good too. And this is like the tape is not in the greatest shape here. But reel-to-reel tapes are fun if you have a reel-to-reel player. Oh, you'd have that too? That's awesome. But one of the most valuable finds that I think we've ever found is Jamie. One day, Jamie was watching a estate sale that was on Facebook, like during the beginning of the pandemic, maybe like the beginning of last summer. There was a bunch of reel-to-reel tapes in this person's house, and it looked like there was there was like a Belafonte in Carnegie Hall, which is really good. There's some other big band stuff. Nothing like that I is like super excited about. I mean, this stuff sounds good, but it's not like my. It's nothing that I really seek out. But I like tapes though, because tapes do sound good. So mixed in with that was this. Miles Davis, Friday Night at the Black Hawk in San Francisco. And it's in amazing shape. I've listened to it once. It sounds pretty good. I want to listen to it again, and then I want to sell it. Because two of these have sold in the last couple months for $250.
Wow.
And I had a reel-to-reel player, but it doesn't sound. It's not. I'm not a collector level as far as reel-to-reel tapes are concerned. I like Miles Davis. I like jazz, but $250. I need to get this in the hands of somebody that's going to play it on like a high level Akai reel-to-reel player. And they can enjoy it, yeah, Jamie found it. She can take credit. It's fine. But, it's got the like sleeve in it. It's got the tape. It's in beautiful shape. It looks like it's probably hardly even been played. Stored correctly and all that. I'm probably going to sell it. It's kind of bummed. It's hard for me to sell stuff. I like things too much, but $250 can help me fund something else stereo wise. I've been trying to get a tube amp sometime eventually.
Wow, tube amps are amazing.
I don't know, but we'll see. But that's all I have.
And I want to show one more thing, since we had someone in the chat talking about girl groups and how much they love them. I had pulled this record too to show, and this is the Chorales. This is Tonight's the Night. Now, I had recently shown this on my YouTube channel, and I said it arrived broken because the first press I found of this came, and the person had just shipped this in a bubble mailer with no cardboard outer sleeve, just the record loose in the bubble mailer. And of course, you guys know what happens. It was very sad to see the original press of this shattered into pieces. But I did find another one, and I was really glad about that. I love the Shirelles. And this is Tonight's the Night. And this is just a fantastic record on Scepter. Now, the Shirelles are a great group out of New Jersey. They formed in 1958, and this record came out in 1961. And this is just a phenomenal record. Tonight's the Night was number 39 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. And if you can find this record goes for a pretty penny online. Now, this one is admittedly not in the best shape. Sadly, the one that I had originally ordered was fantastic. But, I mean, this still has pretty good listening quality to it. It's got some scratches, but it's not too terrible. It's probably PG plus or so. But it's a really great record. And if you love girl groups, I'm sure you know the Shirelles. And I wanted to share that.
That's cool. I never heard of them, but I'll put it on my list.
Oh, the Ronettes are good, Janice. Yeah, I don't have any Ronettes, but I definitely need to do that. I need to find some of them. Now, Katie at Releve Vintage is asking, how do you ship vinyl safely? So, Blake, what do you recommend?
Well, I have some mailers that are little boxes that you fold, and they can hold about 4 records. If I do ship out one, sometimes I keep like inserts from when I buy records, and then I'll put little like cardboard inserts in there to kind of give more padding. But it, as long as it's tightly packed, and it should be okay. I mean, if somebody wants to break it and snap it in half, it's going to snap in half. But you can go a little bit more out and make a little bit bigger box and kind of put more stuffing in there and stuff. I know my family member sent me a bunch of records from his collection that he was going to give to me, and he shipped like maybe 15 records in a box and just stuffed a bunch of newspaper and stuff in it with it, and it made it here fine all the way from Michigan. So it was no big deal. It's kind of a dice roll, it always is. But that's all I could say about it. I've never had a problem.
And you can get those vinyl mailers, like Blake's talking about, online or through, I don't know if the local post office has them. I don't think they do. I've always just saved the ones that I get, and I have a pretty big stack of them now in my storage that I keep when I need to mail out records, and they're great. And like Blake said, you can just put 2 pieces of cardboard between it or a layer of bubble wrap, but just something rigid. Now, if you are shipping the 78s, those are shellac discs, and they cannot go in one of those record mailers. You really need to have them in one of those and then floating in some sort of other box, because those will break really easily compared to the 33s. And then if you're shipping 80 RPM discs, the Edison Diamond discs, which are pretty rare, and I'm sure most of you guys aren't coming across those, but if you do, those have a whole nother level of packing, that because they really, really will shatter just like by looking at them. They're very breakable.
Those are like glass almost.
Yeah, they are. I have one. Well, actually, I have 2 now, I think. But I found a whole bunch of them at our local salvage yard for $1, and I'm very excited about it. I can't play them, but they're fun to have.
Right. That's cool.
Well, Blake, this was so much fun having you on today. Many people pointed out in the chat they enjoyed this, and we should do this again, and I agree. So we need to have another vinyl show soon. So what's coming up next for you, Blake? Anything on Instagram or with Jamie?
I think we're doing a Christmas sale, I think. I don't know if she's promoted it. She might kill me if I spill the beans too soon. We're doing a sale on Sunday. I forget what time. Actually, I know what time. Whatever she says we're starting. That's what time we're starting.
And you're continuing, or Jamie is continuing, that Sunday at Sears, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I love that series. And it's always fun. Blake's in the chat. He's got some great things to say. I hope we get to some record equipment soon. I'm looking forward to seeing what else is in that magazine.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wonderful chat on vinyl. I've definitely got a whole bunch of new artists to listen to, thanks to Blake. And my hope with this is that you guys do as well. You find some music that you haven't heard before, you go listen to it and enjoy it, because at the end of the day, it is all about the joy of collecting and finding and the joy of just listening to that really good music. So as always, I hope you guys will stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
See you later.